Hunele, the grift and the greed continue with this administration under convicted felon Donald Trump, because to be a part of this regime, you got to get something for it, right? I mean, you're putting your morals, your ethics, the laws, the rules, you're putting them all aside. So what are you going to benefit from doing that? You're going to make a lot of money, right? So let's talk about the latest grift and greed that we're hearing coming out of the White House. Dan Scavino, Deputy White House Chief of Staff to Donald Trump. You got to love this. According to a USA Today article that just came out, he owned $5 million worth of Trump media stock when he joined the administration in January of this year. $5 million of Trump media stock. So he joins the administration as the Deputy White House Chief of Staff in January. So that's almost 6 months ago. He had time to be able to offload that stock, to be able to make sure that he either made money, lost money, whatever. I mean, it's stocks, right? But when does he pick the time to be able to unload that stock? April 1st, the day before Trump announced his, quote, sweeping tariffs. So I'm going to repeat that for you. Dan Scavino, the Deputy White House Chief of Staff, picked April 1st, the day before Trump announced his huge tariffs. And that is the day that Scavino unloaded his $5 million worth of Trump media stock. So how did that benefit him? Because you're like, well, Katie, he sold it. After markets closed on April 2nd, the very next day after Scavino sold off his Trump media stock, Trump announced tariffs on imports from countries worldwide. Markets plunged on the news, dropping 12% by April 9th when Trump paused the tariffs. You remember Taco Trump? Trump always chickens out. Trump media stock also fell 11%. Whoa. So Scavino escaped having the value of his Trump media stock drop by at least 11%? The answer is yes. In addition, Sergio Gore, director of the White House Presidential Personnel Office, also sold Trump media securities valued between $15,001 and $50,000 on March 27th, just days before Trump announced his tariffs. Where there's smoke, there's fire, people. Ain't no coincidences in this world. When asked about these stock sell-offs by Sergio Gore and Dan Scavino, you want to know what the White House said in response? This is from the Assistant Press Secretary Taylor Rogers, quote, White House senior staff, including Deputy Chief of Staff Scavino and PPO Director Gore, fully comply with the executive branch ethics rules. I know, stop yourself from laughing. Executive branch ethics rules. You can stop. Attending required ethics briefings and complying with conflict of interest and financial reporting obligations, end quote. Objection, Your Honor, non-responsive. I'm not sure how that is an answer to the question of the timing of how Gore and Scavino divested themselves of Trump media stock, because really, it's just not passing the smell test. But let's go on. So we know that there was this huge sell-off that happened on the stock market after Trump announced the tariffs, right? But he didn't announce them until after the markets closed on April 2nd. So a lot of people got dinged. Now, since then, as this USA Today article reflects, the markets have rallied, which we know, but some stock, including Trump media, remain down. Meaning, even after Trump paused the tariffs and the stock market has rallied a bit, certain stock like Trump media stock, the stuff that Scavino and Gore divested, those still remain lower than what they were prior to the days that those two men divested their stock. So what governs, members of Congress and other officials that are working in the federal government? I mean, listen, we all know about insider trading. You can't do that. But what kind of specifically governs members of Congress and members of the federal kind of administration to not be able to be privy to insider information and to benefit from it in some way? Well, it's called the Stock Act. And let me tell you about the Stock Act because it's very important for you to know. The Stock Act stands for the following: Stop Trading on Congressional Knowledge. STOCK. Stop trading on congressional knowledge. And that's the Stock Act. It prohibits members and employees of Congress from using any non-public information derived from that individual's position or gained from performance of that individual's duties for personal benefit. By the way, it's not just members of Congress and employees of Congress, but it also includes officials in a federal administration like the Trump White House. It also requires that, as I said, it applies to all employees in the executive and the judicial branches of the federal government. So in other words, and it kind of makes sense, right? If you're privy to insider knowledge about something, I don't know, the Deputy White House Chief of Staff knowing that Trump is going to be announcing these tariffs and it's going to ding the stock market, if you know about that, you are not allowed to use that information to your personal benefit. You're not. It's very clear. It's a law. It's an act, right? It's called the Stock Act. So brilliant voice on this, Ginny Cantor. She's chief counsel at State Democracy Defenders Action, a group co-founded with Norm Eisen and a group, in full disclosure, with whom I am working. This is what Ginny had to say. Quote, any stock trades by senior White House staff in the time period immediately preceding the Liberation Day announcement have to be viewed with suspicion. Now, as a reminder, Liberation Day was, again, the close of business on April 2nd when Trump said he's liberating us from, I don't know, fictitious financial burdens from tariffs, when really the reality is Americans are having to carry that burden. Ginny went on to say, quote, the facts and circumstances surrounding the trades will determine if an investigation for insider trading is merited. And listen, Ginny knows this. She was White House associate counsel in the Obama and Clinton administrations, so she knows what she's talking about. Other ethics experts support what Ginny Cantor says. When trades are placed in proximity to a major news event from the White House, they raise ethical questions as well as concerns of wrongdoing. So, for example, Cynthia Brown, the senior ethics counsel at the Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics at CREW, right, said the following: White House officials are supposed to avoid even the appearance of a conflict of interest, but owning or selling shares in the sitting president's media company does just the opposite. So I want to share with you how it gets even worse for Scavino and Gore in terms of not passing the smell test. So, according to this USA Today article, people brought into Trump 2.0 regime that used to work for Trump media, for example, Dan Scavino worked as a consultant for Trump media from 2021 through January of 2025, receiving $860,000 in consulting fees, according to Scavino's financial disclosures. So Scavino made almost $1 million in the 4 years before Trump went back to the Oval Office. Trump brings him to the Oval Office, Scavino, as his deputy White House chief of staff, and Scavino conveniently unloads $5 million worth of Trump media stock the day before the stock took a nosedive. Where there's smoke, there's fire, people. Scavino's the duck. When it walks like the duck, sounds like the duck, quacks like the duck, smells like the duck, Scavino is the duck. You know who else has her fingerprints on this too? Attorney General Pam Bondi, the top cop of the United States, the top law enforcement officer of the United States. Attorney General Pam Bondi previously disclosed an up to $5 million divestment in Trump media on April 2nd. You know, folks, I don't know if Trump thinks we're just too dumb or we're just too distracted to pay attention, but we're not. We are paying attention to this because this stinks. Something is rotten in DC. So what's tough about trying to go after these types of cases and to be able to, prosecute these types of cases is how do you kind of separate what is the knowledge you get that is not public information that's the basis for you making these stock trades or these stock moves. Like, because remember, people that are working in the White House, members of Congress, they're constantly privy to this information. So how do you know whether in the course of their job duties and responsibilities that they become privy to this information, that they use that as the basis to make their stock moves? I get it. And as a former prosecutor and as a lawyer, I understand that there's, that issue, but I also know that an investigation is warranted to prove or disprove it. If you want to appear to be above board and you want to be above board, because remember, those are two separate concepts, right? I may say something to you about wanting to do the right thing, but doing the right thing is a totally different thing. So in this instance, why not be a part of an investigation, Scavino, Gore, Bondi, and others, into your divestment of Trump media stock conveniently within, a day, hours, a couple of days of when that stock took a nosedive? Why not? Because if you didn't do anything wrong and you didn't use non-public information that you were not supposed to use to be able to unload that stock, you shouldn't have a problem. But of course, we all know they'll always have a problem. They'll always have a problem with this. Once again, the grift and greed remains strong, thriving in Trump 2.0 regime. It's upon us to highlight this and to bring it to everybody's attention, because you deserve to know what is happening behind the scenes in this White House. You deserve to know that these people that don't have the moral compass that you do and that aren't working hard like you are, that are sometimes having to live paycheck to paycheck, these people are doing this at your expense. So be mad and be outraged and demand accountability. Here at the Katie Phang News Channel, I'm bringing you this information unadulterated, straight, no chaser, because you deserve to know. I'll see you on the other side. Katie Phang here. The truth matters now more than ever. So hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a thing. Thanks for watching.